What is up, you guys, and welcome to my YouTube channel. So in today's video we're actually going to be making stained glass. We're going to be making 3 different types of these little night lights here. They came out so cute. I've never made night lights before, but I'm super happy with them. So before we get into it, I will say if you have some stained glass experience, it's going to make it easier, because for some reason the smaller a piece gets, the harder it is to handle. But of course I have faith in you. So yeah, making night lights, if that sounds interesting, let's go. Okay guys, really quick, future editing me popping in here again, because of course I want to quickly go over everything you're gonna need, so if you do try to make this along with me, you're prepared. So of course, obviously you're gonna need your stencils, so whatever design you want to make, you're gonna need that. Anything you need to make your actual stencil. Obviously you're gonna need everything for making stained glass. So your glass cutter, your glass cutting oil, grinder, foil, solder, flux, patina, if you choose to use that. And obviously the most important thing. So obviously you need your little mini light bulbs. You need your nightlight base, so the piece that actually like plugs into the wall. And the most important piece, the nightlight clips. So of course I'm gonna link everything down below, but these little nightlight clips are the most important thing. So these, which is what actually ends up clipping onto your nightlight base, is the most important thing, because without this little plate, we have nothing to attach our nightlight to. So again, everything will be linked down below. Back to old me. Okay, just jumping right into it here. Obviously, I am making my stencils. Of course, anytime I speed through any section on my video, it's because I already have an in-depth video dedicated to whatever it is that I'm doing. So of course, I'm going to encourage you guys to be creative and make your own stencils, but feel free to draw inspiration from whatever I'm doing. Just, of course, remember, making your own is always going to be better. So if you do want to see an in-depth video on how I make my stencils, I will of course link that down below. And if not, I'll be back when we're ready to actually trace and cut some glass. So I've got my stencils made, and of course I gotta trace them all out and then we can cut them. Okay, so again guys, if you want an in-depth video on this, it's basically my glass cutting video. All I'm doing here is going over all the glass I've picked out and tracing out my stencil with a Sharpie, so I know actually where to cut once we get to cutting. Okay, now I've got everything traced out. I've got all 3 stencils done in Sharpie. So now we can start cutting. So I'm just gonna grab my glass cutter. This is a pencil grip carbide tip glass cutter. Here's my glass cutting oil. It's a little dry, so I'm gonna put some more in it. You can use really anything for glass cutting oil. I have so many different kinds. So you can get one like this right on Amazon. You can get any brand of glass cutting oil you want. Even if you need to, you could use something like this. I wouldn't recommend it, but you absolutely can. As long as your glass cutting wheel is damp, you'll be all set. Because if you don't have oil on your glass cutting wheel, it's not gonna cut. The oil and the wheel combined essentially is what scores the glass. Without that, you're just gonna dull your tip and it's not gonna score it right. just following along all my lines that I've already traced with Sharpie. I'm gonna first cut out all the deep edges of the moon, and then I'll go back out or go back in and cut the tops off, because I cannot break the tops of these if these aren't broken yet. Otherwise it's just gonna break in the wrong spot. And I'm gonna break it the same way. So going in with my running pliers, I'm just gonna lightly pinch until I hear the crack. And do the same thing. So going along all the lines that I cut out first. Then going back into the tops. And now, of course, using all those same techniques, I'm just going to go in and score, then cut or break all the rest of my stencils. Okay, so again, sweeping everything up. That way when we come back from grinding, our table's already nice and clean. Gonna put my stencils away, and then we can quickly grind all these pieces. Okay, so I've already cleaned out my water basin inside my actual grinder. I've got fresh water right to the side right here. So I'm gonna put on my glasses, my hair cap so I don't get glass in my hair, and grind all these pieces. Okay, so I just gave all of my ground pieces their second bath. When I finish grinding them, they go right into a water bucket to get the majority of that stuff off. But then once I pull them from that bucket, I also give them a fresh wash in clean water. So I've done that, dried them off. Now we can wrap them in foil. So most of these are either white glass or a really light colored glass. So I am going to use black backed copper foil to wrap all of these, because I don't want anything sticking through. So I'm going to use my 1/4 inch black backed copper foil and wrap all of them. All right, so I finished wrapping all my pieces in copper foil like you just saw, but I did want to quickly show you guys what I did on the back side of some of these pieces before I start soldering. Meantime, I've got my soldering iron heating up right here. Again, for quick reference, I use a Hakko FX601. So I'm gonna let this heat up while I'm showing you guys what I did on the back side here. So, since we're making little night lights, this space right here is the only space we have to mount our stained glass piece onto. So this tiny little bar right here is all we got. So we need to try to make it as strong as possible. So to do that, what I did was everywhere where that metal bar is going to be touching my glass, I made it nice and thick. So right here, this is the back side of my little clouded moon. I made this edge, just this one edge, nice and thick. So I wrapped it normally, went back in with a half cut piece and just made that edge extra thick. That way, when I put my bar down, it's got a lot more to grab onto versus a normal thin edge, if that makes sense. So I made that edge nice and thick, and I did the same thing where everyone else is gonna be touching too. So example, for my triple moon, the back side of these black bars is going to be touching our little nightlight. So I made those nice and thick as well. It's pretty much the same thickness as the actual bar on the nightlight itself. So I made those edges just as thick as the bar. And hopefully that is going to add just a little bit of extra strength right at our contact point. So before we have to worry about mounting those, we can just go in and normally solder our pieces together like we would any other situation. Okay, now comes the hard part. I've soldered just about everywhere I can on each one of these night lights besides the actual meeting point of the stained glass piece and where we're gonna attach the clip. So here's a normal night light. And this clip is what we have to mount our stained glass piece to. So it should be easy, but of course they're not copper. So not only for the sake of being able to solder it to our stained glass piece, but also to be able to patina it too. If we want our solder to be black, we're gonna have to cover it in copper foil. So I'm gonna open up my new clip, and right where we're gonna mount our stained glass piece to our clip, we're gonna need to cover in copper foil. So this wide bar right here, as well as this front plate. Here are both my clips. We can use just regular copper back, copper foil. And as tight and neat as I can, I'm going to wrap it in the foil. So like I said, this bar and that front plate needs to be completely covered. Back side's done. Now we need to do the front side. Alrighty, so we've got both of our pieces covered in copper everywhere that it's going to be touching our stained glass pieces. So now we can actually mount them. And I suppose this part is pretty self-explanatory. The objective is soldering these bars onto our stained glass pieces just like that. So here's our thick edge we specifically made. This bar is just going flat down on that edge and we're gonna solder it on there. So I'm going to cover every spot that I already covered in copper foil with solder. I'm gonna hold it right in the center so I can see both sides, making sure I'm nice and even. And I'm gonna hit one of those edges with a nice big bead of solder so it holds it in place. Now we can let go and it shouldn't really move too much. So I'm gonna hit the same spot on the other side. And now it is pretty secure. So we can just go in and solder all those edges that we need to finish. And while we're doing that, we're kind of encasing that bar. Okay, we got all of our pieces done. So the very last thing we gotta do is just wash them and we can coat them in patina. Okay, so as you can see, I already gave them a wash. I coated all those soldered edges in patina, so now they all look black. And now what I'm doing is just basically screwing on all of our nightlight clips. So pushing the clip onto the base of the nightlight itself, and then attaching that screw and washer to make it nice and tight so it doesn't move anywhere. Gosh, these all came out so adorable. And I think I'm actually gonna keep them all for myself. Keep these first round of nightlights all for me. I never keep anything. I think I've kept one piece, and it was the very first piece I ever made over there in that window hidden behind the curtain because it's hideous. But anyway, I think that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you found it both entertaining and informational. As always, I'm gonna link everything I can down below, so any materials that I use that I can find, I will link them, and of course my Instagram and my Etsy. So if you like this kind of content, go check me out over there, and if not, I'll see you next time. Bye!